In this video, we are going to do 17.0 average nums. So we're starting a new section, and this section just has to deal with more challenging recursive problems. Anywho, I have the problem opened up in Racket, so let's just look for the problem statement here. Okay, so notice how the data design steps is done. So it's a list of numbers. So we went over this. You can pause the video and take a look at that if you'd like. Write a function average that consumes a list of numbers and computes the average. The formula for an average of a list of numbers is that the average is equal to the sum of all the numbers divided by the amount of numbers, okay? Finish the uncompleted function design steps 1 through 5 above. All right, so finish these steps, all right, for average. And some of the steps are already done for us, so let's just go over that. So average consumes a list of number and produces a number. Purpose is that it produces the average of a list of numbers, and here's one example for us, all right? So pause the video and try to work through this on your own. I'm going to go over spoilers in 3, 2, and 1. All right, I'm assuming that you guys took a good swing at it, so now let's go over it together. So let's just quickly stub this out, actually. Average of the num list produces 0 as the dummy value to run it against the test. Looks like it's just mismatches. I'm going to grab the template here. Okay, rename it average. All right. So looking at the problem here, right, average is equal to the sum of all the numbers divided by the amount of numbers. So two things are going on here. First, we have to sum up all the numbers together, and then we have to count up how many there are, right? So in this case, it has 3 numbers, so that's that 3 right there. So let's actually decompose this at a higher level, right? We're going to write average, consuming a num list, and we're just going to straight down write the formula here, right? So we're going to grab this division, right? So divide, we're going to divide the sum of all the numbers. Sum of the numbers in the list, right? So that's this part right here. And then divided by the amount of numbers there are, right? So we're just going to do amount num-list, all right? Now this function, these two functions don't exist yet, right? That's what we have to fill in. But this, by thinking of it at this higher level, we, decomposed it into tasks that are more easier to reason about, right? Because we have to write a function that is just responsible for summing up all the numbers in a list, which we've done several times before. I think I did an example when I started introducing recursion, and also one that counts up the amount of elements in this list, right? So there's actually a built-in function for that, right? If you look in the documentation, looking for functions that consume lists, you're going to run into the length function, right? And the length function counts up how many elements there are in the list. So this can just be length. And all we would have to do is write the sum function, right? Because that function doesn't exist yet. All right, so let's just quickly run through the stuff for sum. I already wrote this before, so I'm going to quickly run through it. Consumes a list of number and produces a number, right? Produces the sum total of all the numbers in the given list. Check expect sum. Let's see the list of cons, 2 on cons, 2 on cons, 3 of empty, right? We're just grabbing this example up here. Wait, that's a 5 though, but all right, it's fine. So this 2 plus 2 is 4, plus 3 is 7, so this should produce 7. We only need one example. And find sum consumes a num list, produces 0 as a dummy value. Let's just quickly run against our stub here, and we just get mismatches on that. All right, so we already wrote the sum function before, right? The base case, right, is 0, right? If we sum an empty list of numbers, it kind of makes sense that it's 0, and we want to add each number together, right, on what is the rest of the list, right? We will assume that sum will fulfill the purpose statement, right? So we're going to add the first to the sum of the rest of the list. And let's just run all this, and all the tests do pass. And that is how you solve for this recursive function that involved decomposing sort of a bigger, more complex issue, right? Because it's kind of hard to think about average in terms of like this, right? Right, when I'm going to go back to where I was before, right? We had this, where we were trying to solve average like this with this recursive function, right? We're thinking, all right, I could do the sum here, right? Like this, right? And then do the average, and this would be 0. But this would just be the sum function, right? I still have to divide by the amount of numbers there are. So it's kind of harder to think about. And it's easier if you think about it from a higher level, like so, right? By just taking the formula and slapping it down in sort of this higher level thinking form. All right. Anywho, I'm going to comment this one out. Actually, I'm just going to delete it and submit your answer to Handin. Make sure you pass the server-side test. That error wouldn't be there if you submit it. Anywho, that is about it for this video, and I will catch you in the next one.